I decided I want to be a fighter pilot. So I went to, they accepted me in flying for training, and we flew, we trained in PT Stearman's, PT-17 Stearman. And those were biplanes, canvas covered, open cockpit. We had 2 seats, one in the front and one in the rear. The instructor sat in the rear. And so I was very good, actually. I did everything precision. I had to, remember how we had to go into a spin and pull out, aligned with a railroad track. I remember you had to pull up the plane, pull back on the stick until it just about stalled, and all of a sudden you'd push with your right rudder, and you'd hold the stall, and you go into a spin until you pulled out by releasing the stick, let it go neutral forward, and giving the opposite rudder, and then it would kick it out, and you'd have to judge, so you'd come out on the rail. And I could do that, so my flying was fine. The only thing is that I wasn't that careful. We were flying from a grass strip that was about maybe a half a mile on each square of grass, flat, maybe a half a mile on each side, something like that, half to 3/4 of a mile. And we had 2 lines of trainer flights going parallel to each other. We shared each took half the field, and we're going parallel, so there was no problem there. And one would circle to the right, one would circle to the left, come in and land again. Now the wind, you were going against the wind because that was helpful on takeoff and landing. And the wind direction was indicated by what they call the wind T, which was a big T, white colored, and it was swung around so it faced the direction of the wind. And there was also a pennant on a little pole. And so if the guys who were monitoring it saw the pennant, the little pennant swing, for the wind is now from the east, they'd swing the T accordingly. And then what the trainees were supposed to do is look at the T and make sure they're parallel to the long axis of the T, the support axis of the T. Well, I took off fine, and I had already soloed. I had just soloed, and I had 8 hours in, and I was on my solo flight. They give you a couple so the instructor can be out on the ground watching your landing and takeoff and so on. And when I came around, I took off, went around my right circle, came back on my approach leg, and the T had been shifted. So I shifted my plane and landed with the T. I'm not sure of the sequence here, but I know that at one point the T had been shifted and I did not notice. And I landed so that my direction was no longer parallel to the other line of flights to the flying students. And I was heading into them. And so I maneuvered out. I managed not to, I don't know whether I changed course or whether I lucked out and didn't hit anyone, but I took off all right. But that didn't stop them from giving me a check ride. And it was so serious, this offense, that I was checked out not by the civilian instructors, but by the Army instructors. That meant just about the end. What happened was, those planes were tricycle landing gear, which meant you had 2 wheels up front, and then the tail had just a little tail wheel, And so the plane, when it was taxiing, was diagonal to the ground. That is, the long axis was diagonal to the ground, and you were looking up, and you couldn't possibly see ahead of you over the nose of the plane. So you would taxi in a changing S. You'd make an S and then another S and another S. That's how you taxied. But to do this, you also had to have your seat up. The way you put your seat up was to release the spring by taking your weight off the seat and releasing it, and then the seat would go down or up, whichever you want, but you had to take the weight off the seat to do this. Well, I started down the runway on my test flight and realized the seat was up. So I took my weight off my seat. But how do you take the weight off the seat when you're working two rudders, the rudder with two rudder pedals? And that meant that I braced myself against one of the rudder pedals, which made the plane turn to the left into the guys that were watching me. And I was heading toward them. And I suddenly saw, well, I have to do something, and I had reached flying speed, so I banked the plane. The wingtip, fortunately, did not hit the ground, and fortunately, my plane had enough lift at that time, so even though it was taking off, it held up, it did not stall out, and I took off. Well, but anyway, at the hearing, they said, anyone else would have died. But I made it. So in other words, I basically went into this difficulty because of a poor sense of direction, and so they made me a navigator.
Better.
That's it.
That-
Yeah.